Hey everyone, and welcome to another video of Fun with JavaScript. I'm Mohammad Hassan, and in this video we are going to learn how to implement a JS scroll indicator into JavaScript using JavaScript. So in the end it would look something like this. So as you scroll, as you can see at the bottom, we have this really nice, shiny, colorful indicator that actually tells how much you have scrolled through the page in terms of percentage. So first of all, if you have not cloned the repository yet, what you can do is that go to my GitHub, and essentially you should have this Fun with JavaScript GitHub repository. You can copy the link from here, and then on your terminal you can actually clone it. So ideally when you're on your terminal, you should be doing git clone and then paste this URL. Once you have done that, you should have a folder created. Then you have to run the npm install command to install the dependencies. Once you have done that, you need to check out the scroll indicator branch, which is git checkout JS scroll indicator. Once you have done that, you can open this into your favorite editor. I'm using VS Code for this one, but feel free to use anything. And once you are done that, you need to run the npm start command so you can run the webpack server, so you can navigate to localhost 8080 and see the application running. And if I now go to localhost 8080, I can see all the folders, and if I open this JS scroll indicator, this is the initial state of our project right now. So I'm gonna just open this sideways so we can see this. All this project does right now is it shows some content which is actually from one of my articles that you can see on snis.com, but essentially it also logs down something from the main.js, and what it logs down is actually my buy me a coffee profile. So I have actually got some supporters and followers on this one. If you like my work, you can just go to buymeacoffee.com/muhd.snirs and then just follow me. Now let's get back to the code. So if I go to my code now, the folder that we are interested in is this one, the JS scroll indicator. We have some standard HTML, which is the content of the article that I just showed you. Then we have the main.js file, which has just this main function, and then it logs out. And then we have the scroll indicator files, the JavaScript file, and the CSS files. These are going to be the main files that we are going to work with. First of all, to basically implement this scroll indicator, we need the HTML of the scroll indicator. We could either put that in the index.html, but I'm going to implement this scroll indicator using the ES6 classes in a way that you can use it on multiple pages without having to worry about the HTML, which means that we are going to generate the HTML within our JavaScript class. So we are going to start implementing the JavaScript class. So we can say class scroll indicator, and then we are going to just do this, and then we are going to export this as the default from here. So export default scroll indicator. Now this needs an init method, or we could use the constructor for this one. So let's use constructor. So here we can use the constructor, and then we are going to do some things here, which is actually creating the HTML. So first of all, we need a wrapper. So if I show you how it should look at the end, it's gonna look something like this. So we would have basically a wrapper div. Let's call this a wrapper, and then in the wrapper div we are going to have the inner progress indicator. This should be a div. We're going to give this a class of progress bar, and then this is all that we need to create. Now this outer wrapper should have essentially a gray background, but this progress bar is going to be the actual color, and we have to change it according to the scroll position to identify how much percentage of the page has been scrolled. So let's first create these elements inside the constructor. First of all, I'm going to create the wrapper, and I'm going to call it indicator. So I'm going to say indicator equals, and then we are going to say document.createElement. Here we are going to create a div. We're going to give this a class so we can style it using our CSS file. So we can simply say indicator.classlist.add, and this is pure JavaScript, so you can use this in any project. So we have add here, and then we can say scroll indicator. Now that we have this, we need to create the progress bar, which is this particular element. So we can simply say const progress bar, and then we can say document.createElement, similar to how we did above. So we're going to create a div, then we're going to give this a class. So we can say progress bar.classlist.add, and then we are going to say scroll indicator __ and then progress bar. This naming convention that I'm using for styling is called the BEM method, which is block element modifier model, and you can easily search it on Google and perhaps use that. I really like it because it has a really good structure that is much predictable. Now I'm going to append this progress bar inside the indicator, which means that I'm going to put this div inside the wrapper as expected. So I can do that by doing indicator.append child, and here I can simply say progress bar. So now that we have appended this progress bar into the wrapper or for the indicator, we need to append this indicator now into the body. So we can say document.body.append child, and here I'm going to provide indicator. So I'm going to go to main.js, and here I'm going to import the scroll indicator. So I can say import scroll indicator from scroll indicator. Now that we have done this one, we are going to create a new instance of it. So we can say const indicator equals new scroll indicator. And now that we have this, I can actually remove this one, and I can console.log the indicator here. Let's save this and try this out now. So now on my browser, you can see that we have now an instance of the scroll indicator, and if I inspect the elements, I should be able to see the scroll indicator appended to the body. Here we have it. You can see that we have a div which has a scroll indicator class, and then we have another div that has the scroll indicator progress bar. Now what we are going to do is to style this indicator so it looks like an actual progress bar which we can use later on. So first of all, I'm going to start with the scroll indicator class, and I'm going to give this a random height, let's say 70 pixels, and then we are going to give this a width of 100%, and I'm going to give this a position fixed that we are going to look at later as well. So let's just give this one, and maybe give this a bottom of 0 pixels so it aligns at the bottom, and also left is 0, and I can also remove the px here because it doesn't matter if it's 0. And now we need to import this styles file into the scroll indicator class. So here we are going to say import, and then here we are going to say scroll indicator.css. Now let's save this and try this out. So upon refreshing, you can see that we have some styles applied here, as you can see here, but what we need to do is to actually style it a bit better. So what I'm going to do is that first I'm going to give this a background of F1, F1, F1. So you can see that now it's a bit gray here. Now what I need to do is actually to give this a width of 90% because I don't want this to be 100%, but rather at the center with some spacing. Actually, let's give this the color red so it's more visible. And now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to give this a right set to 0, but what we need to do is to provide this a margin auto. So we can say margin 0 auto, and now you can see that it's actually at the very center of it, right? What I'm going to do is also going to give this a margin from bottom, margin 0, which is top, then auto, which is right, and then we have 4 pixel, which is from the bottom side, and then we have auto, which is going to be from left. So it's top, right, bottom, and left. And now you can see that we have some space from the bottom as well right here. Now that we have this one, I'm going to actually give this a border radius so it is not too sharp from the corners. So I'm going to say border radius, and this is going to be 4 pixel. So now you can see that we have a slight curve here. I'm going to decrease the height of it, so I'm going to say height is going to be actually from 70 pixel. I'm going to change this to 8 pixels so it looks something like this now. And then finally I'm going to give this a bit of a shadow. So what I can do here is that I can say box shadow, and then we can basically say 0. So here are some values that I remember. So it's going to be 20 pixel, and then it's going to be RGBA with 0, 0, 0 and 0.5, and then it actually applies a really nice and soft shadow. If I kind of zoom in, you should be able to see the shadow here. If you don't, then I'm going to remove it and show it to you. So you can see that we have a slight shadow right behind this scroll indicator, which sets it apart from the background. So this is really nice for us now. Now what I'm going to do is just copy all of this content and paste it into our code. So I'm going to go to my scroll indicator CSS, and here I'm going to use all the values that we just used. Now the next thing that we need to do is to style the progress bar. So we are going to say scroll indicator underscore underscore progress dash bar, and here let's say we are going to give this a height of 100%, and then we are going to say width, let's say 50%, and then we are going to give this a color of blue or a background color of blue, and that's going to be it actually. So let's try this out. So in the browser now you can see that we have something here which is this background blue element, but as you can see here we have really sharp edges rather than the circular border radius that we had. So in order to actually fix this, we also need to give this a border radius of 4 pixels. So border radius is going to be 4 pixel here. So now it looks quite good for us. So I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to paste this here, and let's go back to the browser. Now if I change the percentage of it, you should be able to see the concept that we have for the progress bar. So by default, the background should be gray, and then on top of that, we are going to use a color. So essentially, if I go back here and change the color to what I intended was F1, F1, F1. So here you can see that we have a slight white background here. And then when we have this indicator, we can actually change the color based on the percentage of the scrolled item. And this percentage is something that we are going to calculate via JavaScript. So first, I'm going to just copy this one and gonna paste it in my CSS. So I'm just going to go here and change this background from red to F1, F1, F1. And now we can talk about what to do in our JavaScript. So in the scroll indicator.js, we are going to create a new method that will calculate how much percentage have we scrolled when it comes to scrolling the page. So here in this file, we are going to create another method that we'll call render, and then we'll call this function whenever we have a scroll event triggered on the document. So here we are going to say document.addEventListener, and here we can say scroll, and then in this method we are going to essentially say this.render.bind this, and then we are going to close this. The reason that we are doing this bind this is we need to be able to call anything from this render method using this. If we don't do this, this function actually becomes a new scope and we lose the context of this scroll indicator. So it's important that we do it just like this. Now that we have this one, we need to do a basic console log. Scrolled. Let's just save this out and try this out. So right now you can see that if I scroll, we are getting this event, which means that we actually are good to go. And all we need to do is to actually calculate how much have we scrolled till now. In order to calculate how much we have scrolled the page, we basically need two things. One is where do we have the scroll bar right now? And the other is how much content do we have that we have to scroll. So in order to get that, we need to do some coding in our render method. The first thing that we require is to get access to the document so we can get the scroll height and the scroll top. Now doing that for all the browsers is a bit difficult, so I'm gonna use some snippet that basically sends us back the document instance that we can use to get scroll top and scroll height. And this is the snippet that I'm talking about. So essentially it takes care of Internet Explorer, also the modern browsers. So finally we'll have an instance of the document that we can work with. So what I'm going to do in this render method is that I'm going to say const, and then I'm going to essentially take out it from the document. So from here we get the document instance, and then from here we basically take out the client height, the scroll top, and the scroll height. So these are the three things that we need to take out. So if I just console log all of these things for you, you should be able to see what is outputted when we get these values. And I'm going to change this to console.log. So let's save this and try this out. So right now if I scroll, you can see that the client height is 192, which should be what we have here as the height of the page. Then we have the scroll height, which is essentially the height of all the content combined, which is scrollable right now. And then the scroll top is the position of the scroll bar right now. So if I take it all the way here, you should be able to see that the client height and the scroll height always remains the same, but the scroll top keeps changing. So we know that this is one value that we can use to handle how much percentage of the scrolling has been done so far. And if I take it all the way bottom, you can see that we have the scroll height at 10,088, while the scroll top right now is 9,896. So it's pretty close to the scroll height. So this would be essentially the scroll height minus the height of this scroll bar itself. Now that we have that, let's go back to the code and do some coding. So instead of the console log, we are going to say const percentage, and then we are going to divide scroll top by scroll height minus client height. And then finally, to get the percentage, we can simply say multiply by 100. And then we are going to console.log the percentage here. So we can simply say %h, and here we can say the % icon. And let's just see how this works. So here right now, if I go all the way to top, you should be able to see that here we have a really small value, which is 0.08%. If I scroll all the way to the mid, you should be able to see we have a percentage near to 50%. And if I scroll all the way down, you should see that we have 100%. So the calculation for the percentage is really accurate right now. Now that we have the percentage in hand, we need to assign this percentage value to the progress bar. Right now, if I go to the CSS, you can see that the progress bar has a width of 50%. We need to replace this style with the actual value of the percentage so we can see the real-time percentage when scrolling. So here we are going to say const L. So we are going to get the element by doing a document dot query selector. Since this is one element, we can use query selector, and here we are going to provide the whole CSS class. So I'm just going to copy from it here, and then here I'm going to paste it, and then here we are going to say el dot style, and then we are going to say dot width, and then we can say this string that we just copied. So we are going to say $%age and then the percentage sign here, and then finally we are going to say element dot style dot, and then we are going to say background color, and then we can say red or blue or whatever. I can actually keep this background from here, so I'm gonna remove this from here, and then I'm gonna move it here because we are going to make it dynamic later on. So if I go back to my browser now, you should be able to see that when we scroll, we are getting this value, and you can see that we are increasing the percentage of this element, and you can see that it's going forward in the right direction until we are at the very bottom. One thing that I don't really like about the UI of it is if I go here at the very top, you can see it becoming a circle and then shrinking right here, which seems a bit weird because the border radius is now messed up. You see, it's not really good in my opinion. So what we can do here is that if we go here, and then if we say for the container, if we say overflow should be hidden, and if we remove the border radius from here, then I think it should look good. So if I take it all the way back, you can see that it's much better now. It doesn't look as bad as it was. So let's change this in the file as well. So I'm gonna go to scroll indicator CSS. I'm gonna just go here and say overflow hidden, and then the border radius can be removed from here. So now we actually have the progress bar running, but it's not really good, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you notice the scroll bar right now, it's really real time, which means that it is instant when it comes to changing the value of it, but it's not really smooth when it comes to animation. The way we can improve this is if we go to the scroll indicator and apply a transition here, and then we can say transition all ease, and then we can say 0.2 second. So if we do this, and if we scroll now, you can see that there is a certain ease in the animation, and this is much better. So I really like this transition rather than the real-time one. So this is more smooth for me and more intuitive in terms of a user experience. You could change how this works by using ease in or ease out, depends on you, but just not having is a bit weird for me, so I'm gonna put it in the code now. So I'm gonna go to my scroll indicator, and here I'm gonna put this. Now the final thing for this tutorial is actually changing the colors based on the percentage that we have right now. So in order to do so, I would have some colors that we can apply within the scroll indicator class. So first of all, I'm gonna go above this constructor and add a few colors, and you can see that I have actually assigned a color for each number. So we have 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, and then we are going to use the percentage value to identify which portion is the progress bar in right now, and then apply the appropriate color accordingly. So in order to calculate the color, I'm going to create another method. This method will be called getColor, and here we are going to essentially pass a percentage. So we can say %val here, not %, but %val, and here we are going to see what is the value of the percentage right now. So for that, we can essentially create a variable for the final color that we are going to return. So we can say return color from here. And then from this whole object that we have for colors, we can simply say for, and then we are going to create a loop over this colors object. So we can say const key in this dot colors, and then here we are going to see what is the value of the percentage. So if the percentage val is greater than or equal to the key, then essentially what we do is that we can just assign the color equals this dot colors key, which means that first, when it comes with a 0%, this would just go ahead and get this value. But if it's, let's say, 50%, then first it's gonna come here, then in the next iteration it will come here, and then in the next one this will come here, and then it will get this value and assign it to the color variable, and finally return this value from this loop. Now that we have this in place, what we need to do is, instead of using this blue here, we can say this dot get color, and here we can provide the percentage value. Now this is the part where we are using this, and this is the part where this dot render dot bind this is important. If we don't use the bind value here, we would not be able to access the get color property of this scroll indicator class, because then the context changes. Anyways, now that we have this one, let's try this out. So right now we have this as blank, but if I scroll down, you can see that we have one color, and then as I'm going down, we have changed the color. And similarly, if I go further down, you can see the color being changed. Now you notice that this color change is really smooth because we are using the ease. So if I go back to scroll indicator and remove the transition here, you will see what happens when we change the color. You can see that it's really snappy. I mean, it's really quick. It changes it, but there's no transition or there's no smoothness in the changing. So I'm gonna put this back for the better cost, and now you can see that the changes are actually really smooth. I could also increase this timing to, let's say, 1 second, and then let's see what happens. So if I change this, you can see that it's further smooth, but it's further slower as well. So if I go here, it takes about 1 second to do the whole transition. I'm gonna put this back because this is weird. So I'm gonna just put it as 0.2 second. And now we are actually good with this whole tutorial. Alright, so I hope that you liked the video. If you did, please give this a big thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, do it right now. If you want to follow me, or if you like my work, you can actually buy me a coffee by going to this particular link. And even if you don't want to do so, you can just become a follower that would show up here, that would help other people find my pages as well. Until the next time, happy coding, and I'm gonna see you in the next video.